Number 8, focus on revenue, not cost control. We are trained from birth to watch the pennies, to be frugal. I know I was. I was trained from birth to be real frugal because my parents were real frugal. I mean, literally, they worked their entire lives. I don't remember the last vacation that we ever took. Work was what they do. It's not that they didn't enjoy what they're doing, but man, what penny pinchers! Both of them were. My dad and my mom. I never forget things like shut the refrigerator door. You're letting the air out. And I used to say, well, gosh, it'll come back when I close the door. Didn't work. Or turn off the light. You're running up the electric bill. You know how much light one little bulb uses in a month. Okay, not much. But anyway, I grew up like that, and it stuck with me. And to this very day, I can't leave a hotel room without turning out the lights because it just bugs me. I turn out the lights constantly at my house. It's just a habit, and I'm not knocking having a habit that makes you frugal, but there comes a point where we have to uh, trade some of this frugality for a proper path to wealth because we're not focusing on the revenue enough. Very easy to just focus on the cost control. Most people focus on the cost control. Everybody in this country focuses on the money they're spending and don't focus enough on how to get more of it coming in so they don't have to worry about the cost control. It's another one of those habits one has to work on to get fixed, but I promise you, get the revenue up, cost control won't mean near as much as it did before. I mean, I've owned several airplanes. In fact, I got my latest airplane. I just got a contract on it the other day, and I'm going to sell it because I hardly ever use it anymore. But I can tell you, I've had planes that cost as much as 600 gallons of fuel per hour. Can you imagine that? 600 gallons per hour, plus 2 pilots. If I were focusing on the cost control, I could have never made myself get in one of those planes. All right. The latest one I had only needed 1 pilot, and it takes 100 gallons of fuel per hour. A whole lot cheaper to operate. But still, I never even looked at the bill. I didn't ask how much gas did you put in today? How much did I spend on gas today? If I had to ask that, I got no business with an airplane. And yet here I am selling it because it's costing me $10,000 a month just sitting there whether I crank it up or not. When you are making front end profits, and I'm telling you, I don't want to touch a deal that don't make at least 20 grand to 100 grand. You don't worry about things like what your VA costs, what Pat Live costs, what your marketing expenses are, what Gold Club operations cost, your education costs. See, all of these things added together should be a fraction of what you're making in business. If, in fact, you keep doing the right things, which are generate quality leads, master the closing call, get contracts, get tenant buyer in a house, move on to the next one. And incidentally, if you're thinking about property management, quit thinking about it because you'll have almost none once you hand the keys to a tenant buyer. Again, they act like buyers. They don't act like tenants. They act like buyers. They're no problem. They're not an issue. But of course, you got to learn how to handle them up front to make sure there is a clear understanding and then get that clear understanding in writing, which is why I want attorneys closing all your tenant buyers. You're not selling a house. You're basically just renting it. I want an attorney handling that job. Don't forget that part. Keep you out of making a big mess on your own. We got a high transaction value. Where have you seen a business where every time we get paid, it's 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, and so forth? I can't think of a business that's like that. I can tell you all the retail stores aren't like that. I can tell you restaurants aren't like that. I found it very difficult to sell a $25,000 steak in my restaurant. In fact, I never cracked that code. And so I'm making little teeny money on a whole lot of stuff, if I'm lucky, instead of making a great big bunch of money on an occasional deal like we do in real estate with such a small overhead. Your overhead is going to be determined by how much you want to spend on marketing, which is determined by how many houses you want to buy. Once you get able to handle that closing call, you are only going to ramp up your marketing as you're ramping up your revenue. Okay, so when my revenue is, I don't know, 20% of my gross, then I got plenty of money left over to try to invest back into my business and grow that business. Okay, exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm going to find my control, and then I'm going to keep 3 or 4 things going. And if you only have 3 or 4 things going to generate sellers coming to you, that's enough, as long as those things are working and you're not just wasting money on them. Yeah. Would you spend $2,000 to get a deal that makes you $20,000 in 15 to 30 days? I'll give you a minute to answer that question. But you already know the answer. The question is, you don't know if you spend the 2, will you get the 20, do you? That's the big quandary. Well, when will you ever know? You won't until you spend the 2 to get the 20. So yeah, you're risking that you've mastered this craft enough to get paid by spending that money. And you're not going to master this craft until you get trained. And by the way, I've got the only training where you're going to master this craft, because I invented most of this stuff and I wrote all the scripts. So you know, if you're going to, I'm going to give you a chance to get into training here shortly, but if you can't get over the fact that I got to spend a little money to make money, it's going to be very difficult for you to make money. And they might be saying, well, I don't have that money to spend. Well, neither did I when I started. Neither did a lot of people that are now become multimillionaires. And we did what we could do with what we had. When I started, I was broke, working in a service station. I didn't have any money. We couldn't even buy groceries. We had to go to the store twice a week. Couldn't buy a whole week's worth at a time. I had no savings account. I had no IRA. I had no wife working, and we certainly didn't have any rich relatives. I had none of that stuff. So I had to go out there and do my first deal for $3,000. And that was and I'll tell you, that was the most important check I ever got. I did it within 3 weeks after getting out of my first 2-day seminar, which I had borrowed money to get to. And then I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And obviously, the more I do it, the more I'm willing to put into marketing costs. But I started with no money. At that time, I was getting deals out of the MLS, which is why it didn't cost me any more money. Just making all cash offers. And if I didn't flip them, I'd close on them with a private lender loaning me the money. You're talking about a high cost, 18% interest, 10 points, 6 months interest prepayment penalty, no matter when I paid it off. Huge price to pay to get the money to do a deal, because I didn't know where else to ask. So, you know, this guy loaned me money for several years, 3 years actually. But it was such a high price cost, I only did it 76 times before I quit. Quickly learned it's not the cost of it, it's the availability of the funds. Because every time I did one of those deals, I'd either wholesale it, take my time, and or I'd rehab it and retail it. Every single one of those deals I made money on. Of course, he made money too without doing all the grief. A whole lot smarter than I was. But I made money. And I knew that the money was there as long as I could keep it at a 60% loan to value ratio, which today would be tough. So 60% had to cover the purchase, the repairs, and the leftover money to make payments and holding costs. But I did tons of deals, knowing that that money was there. And so the cost of getting that deal wasn't anywhere near as important as the profit that I was getting out of the top end. Because, I mean, even back then, those profits, even on those cheap houses I was renovating, would start at about 20, go on up to sometimes $50,000. So focus on the revenue. Don't spend so much time focusing on cost and control. Now, I didn't say ignore cost control, okay? But I did say don't spend time trying to save pennies while you're walking over the dollars. Number 9, know your numbers. It is mind-boggling to me how many companies have no idea what their numbers are. You know, I don't know how the heck they stay in business, to be honest with you. For example, do you need to know what your break-even point is in your business? how many dollars I got to bring in before I break even based on how much I'm projected to spend on marketing and all my fixed costs. Got to know that. Okay. That's business management boot camp, by the way. Cost of a lead. You have to know how much a lead's costing you. Okay. You devote so many dollars. I want to know what the lead's costing me. And I want to know the numbers of deals I'm getting. So getting leads is great, but am I getting any deals from this source of leads? Got to keep track of that so I'll know whether to keep going with it or not. Revenue from each source. Okay, so I got deals. Well, what kind of deals am I getting? Are they even worth having? And then that'll determine whether I want to keep doing that kind of those kind of lead generating as well. I want a profit and loss statement on each property. I want to see what I'm actually netting on each property, because most of the time you got some cost on there that you don't remember. And here they pop up when you're actually doing a P&L on each property. And you can do that right out of your checkbook. You don't even have to have any sophisticated software to keep track of your income and your outgo. I did that for a couple of years right out of my checkbook before I ever even knew what QuickBooks meant. And your cash flow on each property. Let's say I got a property with tenant buyers in there. Geez, I want to know what my real cash flow is on that property. And I want to keep up with that information. And it's not hard to keep up with. It's not like you're going to have that many properties where you got to keep track of it. So people ask me, well, who's going to do my book? You are. Your check register shows all your checks written, shows all your deposits made. Right there is all you need to do a profit and loss statement or cash flow statement. You add up the chunk of coming in, you add up the chunk of going out, and hopefully there's a chunk of left over. So big mistake not to know your numbers. I asked several restaurant owners what their numbers were. Seldom did I ever get an answer. And sometimes when I got the answer, I could easily tell they're just making it up. They don't really know. For example, when I ask them, what's your food cost? And they tell me 15%. I don't challenge them, but I know they're lying. Actually, they're not lying. Who's making it up? There ain't no restaurant runs on 15% food cost. I had a hard time keeping mine below 30. And then I ask them, what's your labor cost? And they tell me, oh, about 20%. That's a lie. Ain't no restaurant running with 20% labor. So, by the way, that's why you see a lot of restaurants that work drive-throughs or now they don't let you inside because they make the money on the drive-through because it don't require all of the labor that the inside cost to keep up. So they save the money on the labor, and now they can focus more on getting the food out faster to the drive-in window. I understand it. I get it. I know exactly why they're doing it. My wife has a hard time with it. Why don't they open up the inside? Because I'll tell them they lose money when they do. All right. Number 9, know your numbers. All businesses have key numbers. You got to know what they are. Number 10, don't use an attorney to close. God, that's so dumb. It's so dumb. But Ron, we close with title companies here. Yeah, well, we close with title companies here too, until we learn why we need an attorney to close. I close an awful lot of deals, hundreds with title company, hundreds. But why wouldn't you want somebody closing your deals that is there to protect you? First of all, you need to know your title company does not protect you. They are protecting their underwriter, not you. When you close with an attorney, they're working for you. That means you're going to get the right documents, the right disclaimers, the right disclosures, and you're going to do everything completely complying with the law, and you're going to keep all this stuff in a place where you can easily get to it in case you ever get challenged. Also, if you get challenged, for example, let's say your tenant buyer decides they want to move and they want to come back and get back that 20 grand they gave you for a deposit. Well, you better have enough evidence to defeat that case, clearly stating they don't get it back, and clearly stating that if they move, they forfeit it. And if you don't have that evidence and they decide they want to take it to court, I'm not sure what you're going to use for a defense because you have none. So it is entirely up to you to let the attorney do their job, which is protecting you and preparing documents. And then you can do your job, which is actually getting it ready to get it to the attorney. Now, I'll remind you that when you're putting a lease option tenant buyer in a house, the buyer pays the attorney's fee, not you. The buyer is instructed to bring the attorney's fees, which is $650 in my case, to closing, along with the rest of their deposit, because I got $2,500 the day we met if I accept them, and along with the first month's rent. They're instructed to bring that money to the attorney or send it to the attorney if we're going to do this virtual. By the way, if your attorney's in the same city, then I'd have the tenant buyer go in and sit down in front of them, because it's going to make a more lasting effect on them anyway. But another reason you want to use an attorney, because if you ever get in some kind of a legal battle, you couldn't ask for a better witness. Your real estate attorney is not going to represent you in any kind of issue with real estate. They'll probably refer you to another attorney to handle that litigation case, but they most certainly will be a witness explaining to the judge, Your Honor, I closed this thing. All these facts are real. There's a 2-page thing here that they signed off on every paragraph that they understood. They understood this money was non-refundable if they did not buy the house, blah, 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 blah. And what do you think the judge is thinking all this time? Man, when can I get out of here and get back on the golf course? Because he's already adjudicated this case in his mind. Ye who has the best documents and ye who is represented by an attorney will almost always come out on top. I've only had 2 tenant buyers sue me in my entire career, and they lost both of their cases. In fact, they lost them pretty darn quick because I had an attorney representing me, and I can tell you right now, judges hate people that represent themselves. I mean, you got all the odds against you before you even get to the hearing. A title search is always the first thing you get once you purchase a contract or option is signed, because that's one thing you could have a trouble with. Let's suppose I buy a house and I don't have a title check done. Now I get ready to sell the house. Tenant buyers give me $30,000. Now I can't deliver them clear title. Boy, that's going to be a bad hair day. Okay, because you will probably have to give them the entire $30,000 back, and maybe even all the rent they paid along the way, because you can't deliver title. So you want to make sure that the title is clear before you buy, so that when you're ready to sell, you can deliver clear title. All right. And that's the first thing you get done. You have a title search done the minute the ink dries on your agreement, whether it's a purchase and sale or a lease option agreement. Now, I don't buy title insurance on pretty house deals. I'll tell you why. Title insurance ensures that when the seller signs the deed to your trust, that the title is clear and there are no liens or judgments or any kind of attachments or mortgages that weren't already disclosed. If that title is clear, then they tell me when I order a title search, and that's all I need to hear. However, if I just order a title search and I don't get a policy, something goes wrong and there's a cloud on the title, it is now my problem, because I didn't check it when I went in. But it's my problem trying to get out, whatever it may be. And there's a list this long of potential title problems. So if I order a title search, you need to understand now that that does not warrant anything. That does not insure anything. It says that in their opinion, the title is clear. Yeah, I'm getting that opinion from people who close deals every day, day in and day out. So I'm going to trust it. And if there is something on there that's in question, they'll tell you. Okay. So I didn't buy title insurance on the terms deal because I don't have a whole lot of risk. I mean, I put up $3,000-4,000 for closing costs, maybe I give the seller a little bit of money, but that's very small money compared to the cost of title insurance. In fact, I asked my attorney just the other day to tell me what a title policy would cost, and I think I said a $400,000 house. She told me it was X number of dollars per per hundred. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, it came out that if I would have bought title insurance on that property, it would have cost me $2,300 for title insurance policy. Her fee was $650. If I'd have hired her to close and then paid that $2,300 for title insurance, what did I gain? Because that entire $2,300 only protects the amount of money that I put into the property. And there's always usually a loan on it, and they've got title insurance before they close that loan. Now, the minute the seller deeds the property to me, nothing that the seller has done in the past is going to attach to this property. So I'm not worried about future liens attaching as long as I get the deed and record it. So I'm not willing to pay all that big money for title insurance when I'm not paying cash. But when I'm buying on terms, no title insurance. I'm buying on cash, you better not close without title insurance because you got so much to risk. If you're getting a private loan on it, you don't have any choice. You're going to get title insurance on it to insure the lender. Wonder how much money I've squandered over the years buying title insurance on terms deals before I figured it out. Now, your attorney's going to push you hard to buy title insurance for one simple reason. He or she gets half the premium. Okay. If they get in any argument on your part, you say, listen, I only got about $7,000 of risk here. What do I want to pay $2,000 for title insurance? Doesn't make any sense. And even though he may not admit it, he gets it. He gets it. And remember, tenant buyer pays that. They don't pay title insurance, but they pay the attorney's fee. Do you think it's important that you comply with state and federal laws when you're dealing? And you think it's important to get all the disclaimers and disclosures that your attorney thinks you need, including my CYA letter? I have a letter in my course called Seller's Acknowledgement, which I call the CYA letter because that's what it is. There's 2 pages of paragraphs that requires initial in front of every paragraph. For example, I am of sound mind. I know I'm selling my house. I'm not renting again. I know this is not a loan. I know that my buyer is going to make money and I'm not entitled to that money. I know there's a due on sale clause in the loan, and on and on and on and on and on. A page and 3/4 of those things the seller signs off on. That one document is so important to your ability to come on top if you ever get challenged. Because what you have just had your attorney do is get it in writing that no promises were made, that they could come back later and dispute. Look, I can't stop you from getting sued. I can stop you from losing anything, but the best way not to get sued is to have the best documents going in. Your attorney will be your witness. They just won't represent you in court. And you couldn't ask for a better witness than the attorney that closed the transaction to begin with. One lawsuit, and remember this one lawsuit could cost you more than you save in your entire career by trying to save money on attorneys. One. All it takes is one. So what if we let the professionals do what they do best and get out of the way? How about we do real estate deals and let them do the paperwork? Is that fair? All right. Moving into this next one, which is, kind of the same stuff. Always prepare for court. Always prepare for court. And when you use attorneys to close and get proper disclaimers, you'll have the advantage. You really will. In fact, that'll probably defer most lawsuits that someone would like to bring against you. When the opposing attorney finds out what documents you have in your file, they're going to have a hard time coming up with a reason why when it's all documented there. Here's what we promised. Here's what we didn't. Here's what the seller signed and said that we didn't do, and so forth. You got the best package. And you must assume you're going to get sued on every deal you do, and you must prepare accordingly. In other words, keep a good file, keep the disclaimers and disclosures in there. But hey, you know what? Even if you lose them, your attorney's got them in his or her closing files. So don't worry about it if you lose them. So make sure that your attorney is keeping a copy of all the closing files. And there's no such thing as an oral agreement. Don't exist. If it ain't in writing, it ain't. And all contracts are adjudicated based on the intent. Make sure yours is clear and backed up with ample evidence in writing. Okay, I showed you my purchase and sale agreement over here, this big old whopping thing right here. That's it. I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of houses I bought with that little piece of paper right there. So your job is to put the meeting of the minds on here, which simply means you go down the lines here, line by line, and fill in what's applicable, which means you actually have to read this thing to find out what it says. Best time to do that's while you're in bed trying to get to sleep. Be out like a light, because stuff is boring. But once this is filled out, all you got to do is ask yourself, what could the attorney not understand that's on here? And then you got to just learn to write in layman's terms. I give you all the clauses you're ever going to need in my boot camp manual. You just got to make sure that what you are representing here is clear to the attorney. I just had a conversation with my attorney yesterday about a student who's submitting her a deal and he's selling it on a wrap. And he used my famous clause in there that the principal amount of principal and interest on the wrap is the same as the amount of principal and interest on the underlying loan. But then he went on to write a whole bunch of crap that I've never seen in my life. She couldn't understand what his intent was. She thought maybe I would understand. And I said, Michelle, I don't know what the heck he's talking about. So you're going to have to get on the phone and ask him what the intent was and probably have him rewrite it, which is okay. That's the worst that can happen. You go write his contract, the attorney don't understand it, they call you, you get it clarified. That's all there is to it. Nobody's going to die, so don't be scared of these contracts. But again, when you're closed, you need the evidence in your file. Assume you're going to get sued. You'll need a closing attorney. You're going to need a litigation and business attorney. And you're going to need an estate planning asset protection attorney that has a tax lawyer in it as well. Many of you have seen my deal that I made with Bob Bloom out in Dallas. He's an estate planning attorney, and he does all this, all these documents for you to prepare you to make sure that your stuff goes where you want it to go when you're gone, and that while you're still alive, the right actions are taken that you decide you want, and he puts all that in a package to protect you also against predators coming in and taking away what you own. So that one law firm does all that for you. And by the way, you masters that are watching, if you haven't got a hold of him yet, what the heck are you waiting on? Geez, it's free for you. And take advantage of it, because that's a $25,000 package that you get free with Masters. For those of you who don't know what Masters is, I did not intend to talk about it during this event, but I may tomorrow. I won't today. So you're going to get some attorneys. Now, your closing attorney will not ask you for a retainer. If he does, he's not a real estate closing attorney. They get paid at closings. They get paid on every HUD-1 closing statement. Okay, they don't get paid in advance like litigation attorneys do. They'll ask for a retainer. Your estate planning asset protection firm will probably ask for a retainer as well, but you're probably only going to pay them once. Okay, you'll be paying your closing attorney over and over again, most likely.